Okay, I am as God created me. But well, I just blew by the whole thing. It's lesson number 94. I am as God created me. I was grateful to read in this lesson um, the requirements for the ability to be as God created me. And here it says, nothing is required of you to reach this goal except to lay all idols and self-images aside, go past the long attributes, both good and bad, you have ascribed to yourself, and wait in silent expectancy of the truth. God has himself promised that it will be revealed to you, to all who ask for it. You are asking now. You cannot fail because he cannot fail. Um, you know, when when you do, and for myself, I can't say that I actually did anything to have this revealed to me. I suppose, I can say it is true that there is a point where you're no longer satisfied with anything of this world. And he says, lay all idols and self-images aside. There's a point where you're no longer satisfied with anything in this world because you see that the only thing it brings you is more of the same. And the same just doesn't get it after a while. It doesn't give you what it is you're looking for. It doesn't give you the completion, the wholeness that you want to know, what you want to experience about yourself. And I could see in my mind now, looking at it directly, that the wholeness that comes with your experience of recognizing yourself as God created you literally is a peace of mind that passeth the understanding of the ego entirely and cannot be threatened in any regard by anything because there's nothing to threaten it. When I was thinking of this lesson earlier, as it says to do quite often, when I was thinking of the lesson, I am as God created me, it took me back to one of those total moments of the recognition of I am as God created me. But as it says early on in the lesson, when you recognize that you are as God created you, one statement which makes all forms of temptation powerless, the one thought which renders the ego silent and entirely undone. You are as God created you. The sounds of this world are still. The sights of this world disappear. And all the thoughts that this world ever held are wiped away forever by this one idea. Here is salvation accomplished. Here is sanity restored. It's interesting, though, to one who knows himself as God created him, the degree of trust that experience brings, the degree of certainty that experience brings, can often be looked at when practiced, let's call it, or how would we say it, when exercised within the world of space and time, that recognition. can oftentimes allow that person to seem like he's crazy because it's quite different. Um, you know, Harry Potter, this is really funny. Harry Potter had the cloak of invisibility. And in a sense, I am as God created me. His your cloak of invisibility here in the world of space and time, because it does render everything of space and time entirely, I'm not even going to say false, entirely non-existent and unable to affect you in any regard. And as I say, in moments when we call upon that idea, perhaps because the world seems to be once again impinging, because we've forgotten momentarily that we are as God created me, when the world seems to be impinging, and we can really sink deeply into that recognition. Perhaps you've had the experience yourself of recognizing that you are as God created you, not as a concept, but as a reality, as the reality of that, in the experience of that. And when that experience comes, there is nothing opposite to it. The totality of the reality of the fact that I am God created me is all encompassing and leaves nothing behind, nothing out, and nothing that would be required to be dealt with in the future. And when that dawning comes upon you, it is as if the world is still and slowly recedes from its ability to even having existed at all. And in that certainty of identity, in the certainty of the totality of that identity as being completely encompassed by the kingdom itself, as it is the kingdom itself, the unreality of this world gets left further and further behind. I don't know if that makes any sense, because you will for a fact, beyond any shadow of a doubt, when you recognize that you are as God created you, will recognize instantaneously that this world is not real. We use the term illusion as if it's something so we can talk about it for an instant, but it simply doesn't exist. And yet, as the Prince of Peace yourself, which in the experience you can understand why that would be a title that Jesus would have been granted and accepted for himself, because there is no opposition to your position as the Son of God within the kingdom of heaven, as you have been created by God as that kingdom so as to extend his reign. And peace is, in a sense, the rule of the kingdom. Not that there's a rule opposite or anything that could threaten that, but it is the sole rule of the kingdom. It's interesting, even here in the world of space and time, one of the things that the Course talks about is peace is the necessary condition for knowledge to dawn upon you. And you can see why, in a sense, or maybe I don't know if you can see why or not, actually. But in my mind's eye, as I sort of stay with the certainty that I am as God created me, even in the midst of talking to this screen, as if there's something other than the kingdom or my brothers to be talking to who already know this. As I keep track of that, and we can, which is what we're being asked to do. And I don't necessarily know if you have to do this perfectly. I do know as Jesus says in the Manual for Teachers, they are not perfect. Who, those of us who still seem to be utilizing these images in the world of space and time. As he says, they are not perfect, yet they teach perfection over and over again until the perfection is without opposite and totally integrated. And then after a while, you're going to be seen no more. You won't be seen anymore in the world, because the world cannot hold the totality of your perfection, because the totality of your perfection renders the world an unreal place, having never existed, except as a passing memory, whose and all that you take with you of that passing memory is the joy of the recognition that it's gone and over and never was. So may the joy of your leaving be all that you take with you when you go. And I assure you, I don't think I could say this enough, the certainty and of the world being an illusion is part and parcel to the recognition that I am as God created me. And perhaps you can feel that, which is what you're being asked to do. You're asked to start to be able to feel a sense of the totality of that, the reality of that, let's call it light energy. I think that's what Jesus refers to it later in the lesson. True light is strength, and strength is sinlessness. True light is strength, and strength is sinlessness, because there's no darkness in the light. And darkness is always equated to be sin, and in the light there's no darkness, of course. That doesn't make any sense. I mean, you could look at the idea that somewhere there's darkness around the light, otherwise, but it's not necessarily that true. That's only true in this world where there seems to be opposites, where seemingly opposites can exist, but there can exist no opposite to light. One or the other is true. Either light or darkness is true. We can't have both. Everything and nothing cannot coexist. And the simplicity of that may be all that you need to tip the scales in favor of you being as God created him. God created you. If you cannot be separate from everything, you could think you are, and in that thinking, the identification that you utilize in that thinking can bring you experiences as a body in space-time, which indicate there's a condition of separation, and you may be standing outside of it, but that's only the absurdity of that dawns on you when you begin to let go of the need to maintain that position, because that position is very painful, quite frankly. It's very, very painful to stand apart from everything and try to maintain that distance, because all the energy goes into the maintenance of the distance, of the apartness, of the separation. And as we read in yesterday's lesson, the totality of the will of God, your image, the image that we employ to try to maintain that separation, has no ability to withstand the will of God. It really is that simple. If you would have told me yesterday the joy that I would have been experiencing in doing this lesson today, I might have laughed at you. But as I focus on this lesson, and there was something that one of the threads that we were discussing on Facebook, one of our sisters brought to our attention, was the idea of keeping your vision focused on what we call the spiritual eye, or we speak of it as the third eye. and I know that I'm pointing to a location on my forehead, but the location on my forehead is only a symbol twice removed of what that is. But if you can keep your focus on where the light gets in, where we separated ourselves, of course, it winds up being the Holy Spirit. And Jesus starts out as a spiritual eye, spiritual eye, spiritual eye, eyes of the body. Spiritual eye winds up becoming the Holy Spirit. But when we recognize there's an actual focus that we can maintain with the energy or our attention. So if you would say to me, well, what are you doing and what's making you so happy? If I had to break it down, having had the experience of knowing I'm as God created me, which is an experience that had no opposition, has no opposite, and is totally encompassing, having had that experience, there's a certain recognition that I have within my mind and in my heart. And when I begin to go to my certainty, my understanding of who I am as God created me, my attention, my inner attention is naturally on the Holy Spirit or my spiritual eye. Now, for many of you, if I said keep your attention on your spiritual eye, you'd find it much easier than keeping your attention on the Holy Spirit, which is in a sense, an ethereal concept here. Yet the spiritual eye is something that we can feel, we can trust, and we can believe in, because if you shift your attention from there, your experience is quite different than it was a minute ago when your attention was focused on there. So what in certain instances it's capable of doing is sitting here and talking to you, and I'm looking at this image on the screen, but my attention is really is located on one central spot, and that's the spiritual eye or the Holy Spirit, which allows me to both see, in a sense, directly through the illusion to what the reality is, as well as sit here as an image and begin to express the reality that's beyond the image. And you too not only can do that, you will do that. And I'm 100% certain that there's already been times when you have done that. Yet in the world, the laws of the world try to prohibit us and prevent us and keep us from that focus. Yet the law of God, which supersedes every law in the world, even if you still think you're operating in a world, has the ability to give you the power that you require in order to maintain that focus so as not to lose a sense of who you are in any given situation. Or if you've lost that focus in any given situation, the ability for you to refocus yourself on that single focus, that single pointed certainty, is available to you right here, right now. Why? Because you are as God created you, and if you remain as God created you, fear would be impossible. What would you be fearful of? There'd be nothing but yourself and God and your brothers and the souls in the kingdom as a totality of reality, in which there is no opposition, and no opposition is possible, and fear doesn't exist there. There's nothing to be fearful of. So there's nothing to be fearful of here. The truth is, we think that the image goes through these cyclical patterns of things that occur to the image. It's not true. None of that is true. It may seem that way, but it's still not going to be true. He who ensures your sinlessness must be the guarantee of strength and light as well. You are as God created you. Darkness cannot obscure the glory of the Son of God. Why? Because darkness cannot hide the light. Where is the darkness when the light has come? You are the light of the world. Make no mistake about it. You are as God created you. There's nothing that's ever going to change that, and nothing that's going to change my mind about you and me as being that as one. And that should be the good news, and that's in effect how the resurrection is accomplished and why you can live in the resurrection right now, even though it's not till tomorrow morning in space and time.